Hello everyone. So today we'll discuss major scale tone stability. When we talk about individual tone stability, what we're really saying is when played against the root of the scale, how would that note sound? Let me give a few example without going too much into the terminology first. So for example, let's take again C major. All right, let's take this octave. When we're talking about tone stability, what we are really saying is if we play these two notes together, how would they sound together? So right now I'm comparing the octave, the perfect octave, to the root, and it sounds pretty stable, and I'll explain everything in a minute. All right, so you can also compare the major 7th to you can play the major 7th against the root and see how it sounds. It started to sound a little bit off, right? We can do the same to the 6th. It sounds alright. The 5th sound pretty stable. The 4th, the F here sounds a little off, a little dissonant, or we might say. E here sounds pretty stable, pretty happy, pretty bright. Oh, this one's so close, right? They're so close together. It's a little dissonant, it's a little off. They clash a little bit. All right. So when we are talking about note stability of a scale tone, again, we are really trying to look at this sound here. And the reason being, if you just play a note on its own, it doesn't really mean anything. You have to compare it to other notes. And the note that we are comparing this note to would be the root of the key of the scale. And for now, we're not worrying about these notes, these black keys. We're not worrying about the minor intervals since we're only working with the major scale. All right, so let's take a look at the details. So we'll need our keyboard in a minute. So, for example, the root, the perfect fifth, the perfect octave, we call them the perfect consonants. So they are pretty stable. They're very stable. They're the most stable tones that you can find. So if we take a listen again, systematically, what we are really talking about here is, okay, so the root, when played against the root, it's pretty stable. So pretend that I have another keyboard playing root here. So that's going to be very stable because they're essentially the same sound, right? The same tone. Okay, the fifth, when played against the root, this interval is pretty stable. It's a very stable sound. So we like that. We would stay here, okay, if we want to, or if we have to. And it's a good place to stay, this interval. Another place that we feel stable is the perfect octave. Again, when we say this note is it's a stable tone, what we are really saying is when played against the root, this interval sound really stable. All right. So again, perfect the root, perfect fifth, and perfect octave. They are very stable. That's why we call them the perfect consonants. Okay. Okay, major third, major sixth, they're all right. We call them the imperfect consonants. So they're stable enough. They're considered stable. So, but compared to the perfect consonants, they are less stable, but they're stable enough that we can stay there. So, for example, the third sounds pretty good, huh? All right. And then the sixth, it sounds all right. And we consider them stable enough that we can stay there, okay, if we want to, really want to. We have some really dissonant sound, dissonant tones. The major second, perfect fourth, and major seventh, okay? So what we mean here is the first interval, the major second interval. The major second here would be a very dissonant sound when played against the root. It is considered a very dissonant interval, and we want to go somewhere. We want to resolve this note, but we will worry about them in a later video, probably in the next one. So for now, what you need to understand is, hey, this interval here is really dissonant, and when we say the major second is a dissonant tone, what we are trying to say is this interval is a very dissonant tone, because on its own a note when it's played on its own, it doesn't really mean anything. You have to compare it to other notes, right? So they clash. Also, I want to introduce the term clash. So when two notes they're too close together, they will clash. Actually, the worst clash is this, the minor second interval. But we don't have that in a major scale, so let's not worry about that too much. But just keep in mind that this one is a big clash. All right. All right. Perfect fourth. Sounds pretty ambiguous, right? You're not even sure. Okay. So definitely a dissonant tone. Okay, perfect fourth. And then what we have? Okay. Sorry, major seventh. Again, very dissonant tone. One of the descriptions that I've heard before was having smoke coming out on stage. It's pretty, again, uncertain, sound really uncertain. Alright, so these are your note stability levels. Okay, so let's do a quick recap. So you can write out a scale. So your major scale here, like that, with interval numbers. And then point out the not so stable tones. For example, the major second, the perfect fourth, and and the major seventh. And they are not stable. Remember, we are not talking about usability yet, so we can still use them depending on context. You just have to use them with caution, and we will discuss them in, I think, probably in much later sections when we talk about harmony. So for now, all you need to understand is the 2, 4, and 7th in a major scale are not very stable. They're not stable. And you have the stable ones, the rest of the stable ones. And for the stable ones, the most stable ones are root, 5th, and 8th. The less stable ones, but still stable enough, would be the 3rd and 6th. All right? And we're talking about major intervals, so major 3rd, major 6th, okay? Since, again, we're only working with the major scale. All right, so that's it for this video, and in the next video, we'll talk about tone tendencies, all right? So make sure you have this lesson down before you move on. Otherwise, there will be some cheese gap in your knowledge. All right, so I will see you in the next one when you're ready.